Om Ajnanatimrandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Narayana Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So, in continuation of the previous session on Canto 2, Chapter 5, which is entitled Cause of All Causes. The first and foremost principle that one needs to come to terms with about the process of Krishna consciousness is the idea that without an identity, one will not know dharma. Duty follows the establishment of identity. Duty follows the establishment of identity. For one to know what they ought to do, even in the secular context, if you are sitting behind the desk at your office, if you're not given a title and you're not being given a title, you would not know what kind of duties are supposed to be done on a day-to-day basis. So you are given an identity first. And these are various identities, and with those identities come a set of duties. So for a duty to be known, an identity needs to be established. In other words, for material efficiency, one needs to know who they are and in what context they are employed, in what context is the company situated in the larger sphere of perhaps a certain industry, and how does the industry fit in the country or in the world. So the point which I'm trying to talk about is that you need to be efficient, you need to have a deeper understanding of what your role entails. And this is a very fundamental aspect of functioning. You can't really function unless you know your role. That requires knowledge of the organization's motivations. It requires knowledge of challenges which the organization may face. It requires a general understanding of where you are overall. All of this entails proper commitment and execution of duty. So this is material efficiency. Material efficiency requires a deeper understanding of many different aspects of where we are in terms of our identity in the big picture. So understanding the big picture and being able to situate ourselves in a certain sphere, a certain spot in that big picture is critical for us to be able to function, because without which we will not know how we fit in and what we need to do. So it's always inefficient if we do not know what the big picture is. So this applies to spiritual efficiency as well. The whole process of spiritual evolution, the whole process of sadhana is all about reinforcing and establishing an identity in the spiritual sky. That's what we are doing at a very basic rudimentary level, very basic level, but it is actually the concept which we are trying to establish, is we are trying to establish an identity in the spiritual sky. We are trying to reinforce that identity on a day-to-day basis. We are trying to look like what that identity should be. Yeah. So when we dress up in a certain way, we mark ourselves, for example, with tilak. When then we eat a certain kind of food, we observe certain days during the year which are important in the place where we are heading to. Yeah. In Goloka, Janmashtami is celebrated. In Goloka, Radhashtami is celebrated. In Goloka, Gopashtami is celebrated. There's so many different, I would say, festivals which are being celebrated in the place where we are heading to. And what we are doing is we are reinforcing our identity in the spiritual sky by actually going through the process here on the planet. The more realistic the emphasis, the greater the identity which is being reinforced, the greater would be and more powerful would be the experience. This is true. This is basically what we are doing. This is sadhana bhakti. We are waking up and we are doing everything according to the mood in Goloka. They wake up and they remember Krishna. The mothers who cook foodstuff for their boys, they remember Krishna whilst cooking for their own children. So everybody assembles wanting to wake up and look at Krishna, literally. Everybody assembles of wanting to serve him in different ways. So it is extraordinarily Krishna-centric in Goloka, and that produces the extraordinary atmosphere, and that is the spiritual sky. It is eternal, it's filled with knowledge, and it's full of bliss. Sat, Chit, Ananda. So the concept of Sat essentially is the pursuit of absolute truth. Sat is truth, and by definition, truth should not change. You cannot have a concept called truth which constantly gets modified. So that's the reason why we say what we are pursuing is the absolute truth, not relative truth. Not relative truth based on the country that you are in, or the religion or the race that we belong to. Those are modifications of truth. We are pursuing a certain truth which is absolute. It doesn't change. For millions of years, what has been upheld can be practiced today. The same practice can be done in different parts of the world, in different cultures, in different languages. This was the power which Srila Prabhupada established. He basically demonstrated Sat. He demonstrated the fact that truth need not change, and it can be distributed everywhere, and it will be consistent, and people will adapt to it because by nature they're connected to the truth. You see, this is where the recognition and faith of Srila Prabhupada was so deep that he could inject and wake up the jivas around the world and give them an atmosphere which is consistent with the spiritual sky. So when we enter into a temple atmosphere, this particular circumstance is being reinforced that you are not a part of this world. You are a part of Goloka. You are a servant of Krishna. So when we get initiated, we are named Dasa, which is servant, and then Dasi for the feminine aspect. In reality, Dasa in Sanskrit does not translate to servant, it is slave. Someone who doesn't have any say in what the master wants, particularly establishing the fact that our existence is an existence of surrender. Complete surrender to the master, which is exactly what Goloka is. So the point again is that spiritual efficiency requires the establishment of an identity. To the extent to which we have established the identity, to that extent we are going to be efficient in spiritual life. This is true. Yeah, to the extent to which we have established an identity, to that extent we would also have an opportunity to be efficient in spiritual life. This is very important for us to recognize. Yeah? Our efficiency is directly proportional to the identity and the extent to which we have understood our identity. This is Sambandha. Krishna Sambandha essentially requires that we know ourselves. The more we know ourselves in relationship to Goloka, the more efficient we would be in managing our existence. More efficient we would be in prioritizing, more efficient we would be in execution, which is all a part of understanding who we are. The more we understand our context, where we are, greater would be our affinity. So then comes the question of what is it which happens when we have to do things that are not directly connected to Krishna. Even there, the intelligence of doing things which are not directly connected to Krishna comes from the identity that is being established. Yeah? The greater one is Krishna conscious, greater would be their ability to understand what they need in life. Because they would follow the principle of the Creator, which is the theme given in chapter 5. In chapter 5, the theme is all about creation, understanding who is creating and understanding the primary versus the secondary creator. Both of these are being addressed in chapter 5. Who is the primary creator? Who is the secondary creator? The secondary creator is Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma, when being questioned by Sri Narada, is explaining to him, saying, my own motivation and understanding for creation is not original. It comes from a superior source. It comes from my master, the Lord, who has already created. So what is he saying? He's basically saying there is a blueprint that is already formed in the spiritual sky. That blueprint has been delivered to me, and I am an engineer who is actually following that blueprint and constructing in the material universe. So he says that he's following a plan. Now, how efficient Lord Brahma is completely dependent on how much he knows his master. because he wouldn't receive the blueprint unless he was completely aligned with the source of the blueprint. So this is very important for us to understand that creation overall, be it by us or by the secondary creator, Lord Brahma, depends on how well we know our role. The more we know our relationship with Krishna, less disturbing would be our propensity for engaging with material nature. The more we understand who we are in relationship with Krishna, less disturbing would it be for our spiritual life in terms of what we desire and how things are going to be in the future. Notice something. How did Lord Brahma create according to this chapter? He created because he came in touch with transcendental truth, Sat. Yeah, he says he came in touch with Sat, which is Krishna's effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti. Through the effulgence, he practically was inundated with the principle of what is true. So he first knew what is true, and then based on what is true, he created the material atmosphere. Because the more and more it mimics the truth, greater would be the ability of the jiva to navigate back to the original atmosphere. So what is being created first requires an understanding of what lies beyond. So he first came in touch with Krishna's Brahma Jyoti. Now Krishna's Brahma Jyoti is nothing but Sat. This is the potency of Balaram. The idea of spiritual existence and eternal spiritual existence, which is Sat, is the potency of Balaram, which is called Sandhini. This is the Sandhini potency of being able to maintain an eternal existence, which is the quality of the spiritual sky. So Lord Brahma came in touch with Krishna's Brahma Jyoti, and he was inundated with what is called perfection. And then he was given instructions. The instructions came in the form of a mantra. The mantra that was given to him is the Gayatri, but our acharyas also talk about the Gayatri being the Gopal mantra, which basically allowed Lord Brahma, who was a devotee of the Lord, to understand Krishna's intentions, because he could basically develop an identity in the spiritual sky, and through that he was able to establish what is required of in the material world. Now, what am I saying here is that a mantra was given. This mantra required Lord Brahma to be situated in a place where he could receive the mantra. He could understand what is required. Have you seen circumstances where some of us can hear and some of us cannot hear? Have you seen circumstances where some of us can hear and some of us cannot hear, even when we sit in a class? We notice this situation even when we participate ourselves in some classes. We hear, and in some classes we can't. In some classes we hear things and then we are listening, but we can't really hear. Yeah, we can't really hear. And at the same time, what happens is basically we understand things the way we want it to, because our mind is a little bit muddled, and then what is being heard traverses through the mud and then gives us a picture which is slightly distorted. We sometimes miss the truth because we hear things the way we want to. Yeah? Why? Because we are in touch with the mode of ignorance. That's why. The mode of ignorance, tamas, covers our ability to hear. Therefore, Lord Sri Brahma situates himself in the highest point, which is Satyaloka, which has very little contact with the material mode of ignorance. Very little. It's marginal to the point where it's minimal, it's imperceptible. This is the higher level of material consciousness. The material mode of goodness, when it predominates, has the ability to minimize all these issues. So then he is able to hear instructions, he is able to meditate, and then he is able to act upon those instructions. This also, in one sense, approximates, or I would say mimics, our own evolution as devotees. Ado Shraddha, first faith is established in the heart. Faith is given because someone has faith. Someone who has faith is able to give faith, and from their words, their faith in their heart travels into our ears and establishes itself in our heart. So their faith establishes itself in our heart and then establishes itself by removing the ignorance that we experience. So first, faith is to be there. Then Ado Shraddha. Shraddha is given because faith travels from one speaker to the other. Faith traveled from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Rupa Goswami. From Srila Rupa Goswami's heart, his words came into the ears of his disciple, so on and so forth. We are hearing and we are developing faith. Srila Prabhupada's chanting in Tompkins Park brought forth sound and brought forth his faith. His faith traveled from Tompkins Park to different parts of the world, and he established the movement. So the point is that faith is given, and then it establishes itself in our heart, and it destroys ignorance because it has come from the original source of faith, all experiences. It comes from the spiritual world, right? So even in bhakti, even our process, it's an evolution. First there is faith, then there is bhajana kriya, because once there's faith, then there are instructions. But to follow the instruction, to receive the instruction, one needs to have faith, and they need to be properly situated. If they are situated in the material mode of ignorance, they would interpret what is being given according to their will. And as a consequence, they wouldn't be able to follow the instructions of the original speaker or the giver of faith. So bhajana kriya depends on where we are. If we are in the material mode of ignorance, difficult. Material mode of passion, very difficult. So to be situated in the material mode of goodness is required for us to be able to hear and also act upon what is being heard in a very efficient way. So this is very important for us to understand. So there is Ado Shraddha, then there is Sadhu Sangha, and then there is Bhajana Kriya. So there's Ado Shraddha, then there's Sadhu Sangha, there's Bhajana Kriya. Because then we are receiving faith from the sadhus, from the guru, from someone who is giving us faith. We are looking at the preceptor, we are looking at the precepts, we are looking at sadhus who are demonstrating what they've already heard, and we are receiving siksha. So there is first diksha, and then there's siksha. Both of these have the capacity to give faith. Yeah? Both of these have the capacity to give faith. There is no difference. So the next point which we have to take up and understand and process is the fact that there is anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti is a matter of us being able to establish our identity. The more conflicts to the original identity, the more the anarthas exist in our heart. The more conflicts about thoughts of the future, greater are the anarthas. More Krishna is integrated into our planning, and our whole planning is basically Krishna-centric, and we are constantly endeavoring to eliminate, possibilities of confusion by constantly coming in touch with faith. Then there is a great level of success which is in store, because the anarthas are going away. That which has no meaning, anartha means that which has no meaning, is being removed, nivarti. So the chanting process becomes easier. Now, why does chanting become so difficult and then slowly, steadily can become easier? Because once the process of anartha nivarti is over, once the devotee is situated in the highest levels of the material mode of goodness, because we are still not crossed over, we are still very close to the border between the spiritual sky and the material sky when anartha nivritti is over. We haven't crossed over, but there's great clarity, and the progress that is made between anartha nivritti and bhava is quite rapid. It is quite rapid because one is situated in the higher mode of goodness, and they're able to use their time and their ways and their planning and their day based on the higher mode of goodness. So there's a lot of efficiency in receiving and acting upon what is being received. And when one acts upon what is being received very efficiently, around, I'm giving a percentage because just to give an understanding, it is not, don't hold me to it in terms of how the percentages have come. I would say for most part, let's say for example, during anartha nivritti, 80% of our chanting is basically troubled. Why? Because it is troubled by the lower modes, passion and ignorance. As soon as anartha nivritti is slowly accomplished over a period of time due to sadhana, then 80% of our time is utilized and it is practically absorbed in hearing nama, and the chanting becomes very efficient. Why is the chanting process so important? It is because Lord Brahma understood the plans of Krishna through sound, through mantra. So if you want to create a future, you better be guided by the sound form of Krishna. Nama is the sound form of Krishna. So when we are guided by Nama, when our efficiency is being seen in chanting of Harinam, then our ability to understand and act upon the future is more and more evident, because we have a greater and greater ability to focus on our eternal identity. So this is the plan. The idea is that just as Lord Brahma is situated in the higher levels of consciousness, he sees a transcendental plan first, then he is executing a material version of the transcendental plan to facilitate the souls coming back. And he is situated well above the modes so that he doesn't get dragged down by what he is creating, or he's in touch with the material modes of nature, but he's not captured by them. This is our plan as well. We need to understand our future. If you don't understand our future based on the identity that needs to be established, we're going to struggle with the future. Why? Because the future is like a maze. You enter the maze and you wouldn't know how to get out of it. The problem is that what we are talking about is not a matter of years, not days and years. We're talking about lifetimes. We could create lifetimes worth of problems by simply taking on an objective which is not directly connected to the path of establishing a spiritual identity. This can practically be several lifetimes worth of being caught up in things which don't matter. Imagine the time spent in a lifetime, 2 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, coming back to the planet in different environments, different bodies, the 5 senses in the mind interacting with material nature, being manipulated by the modes of nature, being manipulated by and create complications created by previous complications. This is something which people don't realize is happening all the time. It has already happened to us. For many of us, this is not our first lifetime in coming in touch with Krishna consciousness. We have come in touch with transcendence in the past. And the problem is that we didn't quite think about the future as seriously as we should. Now, if we focus on constantly thinking about how to create a future which allows us maximum absorption in the life in Goloka, then such a future will manifest on this planet. It can create an opportunity which gives us very little scope for deviation, very little scope for forgetting Krishna and Radharani. So this is the plan. And this needs to be understood by the original creator, the secondary creator. His own realizations, saying, yes, I was born, I was confused. Lord Brahma was confused. He didn't know his duties. Then he was given the universal form to meditate. Then he saw Krishna's plan. He saw what needs to happen. And slowly, steadily, he evolved and he understood that he was an engineer who was going to execute a blueprint. And his job was to stick to the blueprint. His job was to be detached because a part of his creation was going to be destroyed every night when he sleeps. Can you imagine this? He creates and he has to be detached because what he creates is going to get destroyed. So a child builds a castle on sand, on the beach, and the waves come in the night, whenever the waves come, they just take and destroy the castle. This is his experience. If you're not detached, we could develop psychosis. That every time we do something proper, there's some destruction. Many of us feel that way about life. We feel that everything we touch goes to dust. What should we do? Anything and everything we do just goes to dust. We don't really succeed in anything. Or there are problems here, there are problems there. Life is full of problems. In reality, detachment is being shown by Lord Brahma, the creator. How is he managing this? That every day he is creating and he's getting destroyed? He is managing this because he knows this is the plan of the Lord. He knows he is an instrument, a nimitta matra. He knows that he is basically going to do things as required by the Lord so that the Lord's plan works. So that is our situation as well. This is where we need to understand, and we spoke about it in the previous session, that the principle given by Mahaprabhu, even though simple, is the most profound principle of existence. Mahaprabhu gave us Harinam, and then he gave us Trinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Sahishnuna. Amani Manadena Kirtanya Sadahari. Why did he give us Trinadapi Sunichena? Because that's the principle that we need to follow. We need to follow the principle of being able to tolerate the circumstances of life. Life can be good, life can be bad. Tolerate it. It's easy to tolerate when it is good, but it is not so easy to tolerate when it is bad. But both times are dangerous if you don't know why you're here on the planet. Be it good times or bad times, we have to be very careful in understanding what the future holds and wanting to desire a certain future. If we constantly desire a certain future, which is eternal, Sat, that is filled with knowledge and Ananda, then we have the ability to situate ourselves in a life circumstance which wouldn't disturb us in our sadhana, right? So that's what we need to do. So what we are trying to do here is basically say that the future needs to be understood, but the present needs to be tolerated. Tolerate the present. Tolerate the present. It doesn't mean we don't make adjustments. We constantly try and make adjustments. We can be practical as we want to, based on the circumstances that we are in. But always have the big picture in mind. Always understand where you're going. Always plan with the big picture in mind. This is what we need to do, and tolerate the circumstances, understanding that at any given time where we are is nothing but Krishna's will. He says this, 9.22. He says that in the Bhagavad Gita. He says very clearly that I'll preserve what you have and I will carry what you lack. This essentially means we accept today as his creation, his particular manifestation of mercy. The day we start accepting that today is his, this is you, Krishna, you put me in these circumstances. Now please guide me so that I can be a better servant. Then in that sense, what would happen is that a greater plan would be revealed. This is Lord Brahma's plan. He also did this. He practically understood. He basically said, who am I? What am I? He started understanding his relationship, and then he received Krishna's plan and he started implementing it. The same would happen to us, because the intelligence required to take decisions for the future would come from the Lord. It would be given in the heart. The super soul exists in the heart. It would be given through scripture, through guru, through sadhu, through experiences. We would know what to do. But constantly, if you have a goal which is transcendental, we can't be very wrong in the future. We can't be very wrong. So if today is complicated, understand that the future can be uncomplicated as long as we aspire for establishing the pure identity and try and look and see what we could do with the present. Yeah? What we could do with the present is to see who we are today and to see if we can maximize our potential. What is it we are today, and what is it that has been given as an opportunity? Am I really pushing all of this to the limit, or am I just holding back and saying that you need to give me more? Krishna says, I've already given you everything. But we can't really say that you need to give me more. So the idea is, okay, take stock of what is being given today, push yourself to the maximum. And this is principally true whether it's a yatra or an individual or a family or any circumstance. We need to look at what's being given today, and we need to see if we are firing on all cylinders. That's our business. We need to see if we are really pushing on all sides. Once we do that, Krishna will create further opportunities. This is how it works. It works because we're using the present nicely. Does it make sense? Why wouldn't it make sense? Because this is exactly how we have seen the material world operate. The beauty is we accept this when our boss does this, yeah? When the boss in the corporate world, he basically says that you're not really functioning because the previous year and this year are the same. There's been no improvement. We accept it. We don't challenge that. Yeah, we may challenge it, but we at least accept it because they convince us that, you didn't really do any better than you did the previous year. Why should I promote you? But we can't accept it when Krishna does it. Yeah, when Krishna does it, we can't accept it. But Krishna is expecting the same. He's saying, look at your circumstances, look at today. Are you really functioning to the fullest level? Look at all the opportunities that you have and see whether you're taking care of all those opportunities. If you're pushing forward in all those areas, then the next set of opportunities will be created. Greater boundaries would be formed. This is how Krishna consciousness works. We need intensity. We need intensity for you to pursue. You see, that is what Lord Brahma is also talking about in this chapter, is that there are layers and layers and layers of complications of material energy. How do you push through all these layers? It requires intensity. Intensity is required in terms of goals. Intensity is required in terms of what we do. We always need to see if the previous year can be improved upon, or you can say previous week, previous month. This is how we move forward. This is exactly what we need to do. And then Krishna says, I will preserve what you have and I'll carry what you lack. So the more we do with what's being given, greater would be the opportunity. This is basically Trinadapi Sunichena. First, tolerate the circumstances of what's being given. Taro riva sahishnuna, right? Trinadapi Sunichena, taro riva sahishnuna. Then when we start acting in a manner which is detached and we start executing fully, taking up opportunities as given by Krishna as mercy, then we have the opportunity to do more and more and more. So there's a very practical approach in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is actually very scientific. Why is it scientific? It's because you have been given a certain set of goals. Our acharyas have had experiences. At each and every experience, they have experienced a certain level of Krishna consciousness. They have documented it, and then they have given it to us, and they have given us a process. They are saying, you follow the process and you will go through the same. The question is, how well are we following the process? So our job is to take that blueprint which our acharyas have given and look and see if we are following the process and how can we improve at every stage. Once we are going fully in all these areas, then there's definitely going to be results. Those results will match what our acharyas are experiencing. That is what we need to do. We need to understand that this is very scientific. In other words, a process is scientific because if someone follows it, X person follows it, they can also experience what Y person has already experienced. It's a documented process. It doesn't mean it is the same. It means it's similar because every individual is different. We are all different. We are variegated in our propensities. Our karma is different. Our past is different. Some of us have done a lot in the previous lifetime. So this lifetime, it's easy to think in a certain way because we have already thought in a certain way from the previous lifetime. Some of us are taking the first steps in Krishna consciousness. As a consequence, we are still taking steps and taking the whole process of Krishna consciousness in a somewhat slower pace. So there are different variegated individuals, and as a consequence, the experience is similar. It is not the same, but it has been documented. So one can say that it is similar, and as a consequence, you can experience this. Yeah, it is true. This is exactly how it works. So someone who is very advanced in the previous lifetime, they will blaze through anartha nivritti in this lifetime. And they would already be very established after a few years of chanting. Someone who is not very advanced and they're coming in touch with Krishna consciousness for the first time, they may need to use the entire lifetime for the purpose of anartha nivritti. So there are different levels of evolution and different levels of, I would say, experiences. So one who is coming for the first time will have a certain experience of anartha nivritti. Someone who has already experienced evolution in the previous lifetime and they've already been in touch with spiritual potency and have been chanting, they will experience anartha nivritti in a different way altogether. Yeah, so different people with different levels of advancement from the past. Some come as yogis. They have been yogis in the past, and as a consequence, their experience of Krishna consciousness could be different. Some come from other disciplines, and they bring in those propensities. They tend to attract such things as well because they are by nature attracted to certain things. Yeah, you can find that in different people, different variegatedness. You can find different samples of consciousness at various levels, but a broader plan can accommodate all of this. A broader plan gives you, a sense that this is a process which is similar. It is not the same, and you can understand where they are. Yeah. So let's go through some of these verses, and we will take questions after this. Sri Narad Muni asked Brahmaji, "O chief amongst the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me the transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the super soul." Sri Narada, who is empowered incarnation of the Lord for devotional service, he is asking these questions so as to facilitate us. It is not because he is in ignorance. He is facilitating us, the readers of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is Srila Sukadeva Goswami repeating the questions of Sri Narad Muni to Lord Brahma. "My dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? My dear father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe is within your grip, just like a walnut." They're using the example of a walnut because apparently the tree is very large, and that particular enormous tree is supposed to be contained within it. Yeah, I'm thinking that is the walnut trees are basically quite elaborate in their system, but then a seed contains the essence, and one who understands the essence and one who understands the seed is able to fully understand the whole tree. "My dear father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? As a spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. So a spider basically has saliva, which manifests from its own body. So it is quite self-sufficient. It doesn't have to go and bring outside material to build a nest or a web. So a spider is quite self-sufficient. So here, Lord Brahma is being compared to a spider. So Sri Narad Muni is saying, are you like a spider where you're self-sufficient, where the source of your potency, your knowledge, your energy, everything is basically within you? Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics, and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior, or equal, eternal, or temporary, is not created from any other source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. So by observation, superior, inferior, equal, eternal, temporary, by observation is not created from any other source, because the source of Lord Brahma is not very evident. So as a consequence, Sri Narad Muni is making this statement. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities and perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Why is Sri Narad Muni asking this question? He's logically saying, you know why I'm asking you this question as to whether there's someone above you? Is because you seem to be engaging in austerities. You are engaging in tapasya, you are engaging in meditation to receive from someone. Unless there is someone above you, why would you perform austerities? So it's a logical question. My dear Father, you know everything and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I've inquired from you be kindly instructed to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student. Now, this is basically submitting himself. Even though he knows he is submitting himself because this is the appropriate behavior of one who is asking questions and wants to receive, even if they may know. Lord Brahma said, my dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead. So Lord Sri Brahma, he is giving Sri Narad Muni the appropriate place. He's saying, yes, you are basically wanting to remind me. Sri Narad Muni wanted to remind his own father, saying, dear Lord, there's someone above you. And then he also wanted to remind all of us. Whatever you've spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahma Jyoti. Just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets, and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. So here, light comes from the sun. The sun is the provider of light to the moon, to the stars, and to all celestial objects. So the sun is the source of the original light. So Sri Brahma is saying, the Lord's creation, I create after coming in touch with the Brahma Jyoti by his personal effulgence, coming in touch with Brahma Jyoti, which essentially is the potency of Lord Balaram to maintain Sandhini. This is basically where Sri Brahma is giving us a clue that he is receiving inspiration from the potency of the maintaining, the potency of Sat, that which always needs to be known. So only when you understand the full truth can you create the partial truth. It is actually sensible. So Lord Brahma was mercifully given the full truth, which is the Sandhini potency, the Sat potency of Krishna. He came in touch with the Brahma Jyoti. He came in touch with the knowledge that's available when one comes in touch with the transcendental effulgence of the Lord, the Sat potency. When we come in touch with the highest modes of goodness and we go beyond, we come in touch with spiritual energy. Because of our desires of wanting to know who we are, the knowledge of knowing who we are comes because we are in touch with Sat. We are in touch with Sat, the eternal, the object of the basically the spiritual energy of the Lord. the spiritual effulgence of the Lord, the Brahma Jyoti, the Sandhini potency, the Sat potency. Because we are in touch with the Sat potency, which is truth, we start understanding who we are in relationship to the Lord as well. So this is a part of evolution of consciousness, which is being spoken of. And Lord Brahma says, I came in touch with Sat. Because I came in touch with understanding the original truth, then I got to know what else to do. So he's saying his personal effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti, is where I started. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the superior controller. Yeah? So here he's making a reference to Krishna. He's making a reference to Krishna specifically in relationship to Krishna's ability to give forgetfulness to those who choose to forget him. He's saying there are a class of men who are less intelligent who think that Krishna doesn't exist. That potency of thinking that Krishna doesn't exist also comes from Krishna. Krishna makes them forget. By staying in the heart, if they choose to forget, if they want to forget, Krishna says, okay, here's the way to forget me. And then they start thinking Lord Brahma is everything. Yeah, we notice this with the Asuras in every Purana. Ravana, Kumbhakarna, yeah, all of them meditating on Lord Brahma, but then becoming completely inimical to Krishna, who is the origin of Brahma. This is basically what Lord Brahma is referring to. So these foolish men, they pray to me and go against my origin. That potency of them forgetting you is also being given by you. He's basically attributing Krishna's external potency and saying, you make them forget. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of, it is I and it is mine. So, why can't she? The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence. In other words, she can't be the origin. She can't be the origin, the illusory potency of the Lord, because the illusory potency of the Lord cannot be the source of my knowledge. The illusory potency of the Lord makes people forget the Lord. How could it help me remember him? So he's saying, no, the Lord's external energy is not doing this to me. The Lord's external energy is not helping me. The Lord's internal potency is helping me. The 5 elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof set up by eternal time, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. And in truth, there's no other value in them. So, 5 elementary ingredients of creation. 5 elementary ingredients of creation are the 5 different aspects of any object in this world: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. They are interacting with eternal time. Eternal time in the form of the modes of nature are basically manipulating these elements. And then the intuition or nature of the individual being. The nature of the individual being as differentiated parts, which is basically the 3 modes of nature, they're all basically Krishna's parts and parcels. There is no other truth and there's no other value. If they want to look at themselves separately, there is no value. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord. The demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body. The different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and different sacrifices are performed just to please him. All different types of meditation or mysticism are means for realizing Narayana. All austerities are aimed at achieving Narayana. Culture of transcendental knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayana, and ultimately salvation is entering the kingdom of Narayana. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him under his vision as the all-pervading supersoul, and I also am created by him only. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him. You see, this is very, very closely resembles how we proceed in devotional service. Ado Shraddha. What do? Someone is carrying faith, and when the person with faith, we come in touch with the person with faith, then we basically are attracted to that person because when they speak, they are giving us faith. So Krishna is using someone as an instrument to attract us. This is how the whole concept of Siksha Guru takes place. This is the whole concept of Siksha Guru, is where Krishna decides to attract us through the means of someone. So they are inspiring that individual to speak and share Krishna consciousness. And that faith, when it enters into our heart, we become attracted to them. This is Krishna using a set of personalities to attract us. There can be more than one Siksha Guru. There can be more than one. Now, amongst the many Siksha Gurus, we finally basically take Diksha from one of them. So the remaining Siksha Gurus, they remain Siksha Gurus, but we take Diksha from one of them and he becomes a Diksha Guru. So in the eyes of Krishna, he's attracting us by Guru. They can be Siksha or Diksha. And this is the same principle. He enters into their heart and then he starts inspiring us. So what is the principle of faith? The principle of faith and principle of Sangha is inspiration. If we are inspired by someone to act in Krishna consciousness, then Krishna is using them. And until that inspiration exists, then they are basically giving us Siksha. Until such time that inspiration exists, they are basically giving us Siksha. It's a matter of inspiration, inspiring us to be able to act in Krishna consciousness. And this particular idea of inspiration is being spoken of here. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him. So someone is already inspired by the Lord and they have deep faith. And then Krishna uses them to attract others under his vision as the all-pervading super soul. And I'm also created by him only. The Supreme Lord is pure spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities. Yet for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy, the material modes of nature called goodness, passion, and ignorance. These three modes of nature being further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activities put the eternally transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. One moment, I'm just trying to see how far I should go because I'm a little short of time today. O Brahmana Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above mentioned three modes of nature, but he is the controller of everyone, including me. So initially, there is the mode of goodness. Shuddha Sattva is the transcendental mode of goodness, which is completely uncontaminated by passion and ignorance. And then the material mode of goodness is slightly in touch with passion and ignorance in the higher planetary systems. It is more so in the lower planetary systems. And as a consequence, even if you notice during different time cycles, in Satya Yuga, it is predominated by goodness. In Dwapara, Treta, the goodness reduces and then passion and ignorance creep in. And then in Kali Yuga, the mode of ignorance dominates. So what we notice here is that just through the Yuga cycles, you can notice the quality of time changes and how we interact in the world and what plans we make. In the Satya Yuga, there was longevity. Longevity is a function of the mode of goodness because Sat, truth, is very high, and as a consequence, everybody is preserved. The atmosphere is well preserved. The bodies last longer before they get destroyed eventually. So there's a higher quantity of mode of goodness in Satya Yuga. Then there's a reduction and reduction. Finally, in Kali Yuga, it is constantly a fight, and it is very much dominated by the mode of ignorance. It is the Iron Age. So the point which you're trying to make here is that in coming in touch with the modes of nature, the living entity uses their five senses and their mind, and accordingly they create activities. And based on these activities, they get bound by the same activities for the subsequent lifetime. So the idea is that if you don't want to be bound, you have to be situated in the mode of goodness. If you're situated in the mode of goodness, then the planning is very good. Then we understand what to do for the future. As we go along lower and lower in the modes, then there is lesser and lesser information available. And action in the lower modes automatically creates reactions, which again bring us back in different ways. Yeah. So that is being shared here, that we are in touch with the modes of nature. And as a consequence, the higher the mode of nature, the more conducive, giving us the ability to act. We spoke about it in the introduction. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates by his own potency eternal time, the fate of all living entities, and their particular nature for which they were created. And he again merges them independently. Yeah. So in one sense, you can say the Lord is responsible. But in another sense, we know that our being situated in a certain mode will practically determine if we have the ability to move forward and receive instructions from the Lord. Think about it. Lord Brahma, being situated in a higher mode of goodness, allows him to understand the plan of the Lord. He came in touch with the Brahma Jyoti. He comes in touch with transcendental truth because he's way up in the material universe. As a consequence, he is able to come in touch with the Brahma Jyoti and receive an understanding of the intentions of Krishna, being able to receive the potency and the ability and the instructions from the Lord. He's very well situated to receive. The lower we go in the universe, less situated we are. So we notice that consciousness of entities in the lower parts of the world have a certain characteristic of not being aligned with Krishna's plans, which is our state as well. If our consciousness goes down, then our planning for the future is practically covered over by the mode of ignorance. We don't think about Krishna, we really can't plan. There really isn't any way for us to be able to understand how a future can manifest. So I think I'm going to stop here. We have another 12 verses to 15 verses that I would like to do in the subsequent session. So we basically further went into the verses of chapter 5 to see how Lord Brahma, who comes in touch with Krishna, begins the process of creation, and he's explaining the process of creation to Sri Narad Muni. He's practically attributing the fact that the modes of nature, the interaction of the 5 different elements within our bodies and a subtle body, are practically going to result in activities. And these activities would determine our future, because future activities will depend on what we are doing today. This fact is something that we need to understand, is that if we are not situated in goodness, we are at a disadvantage to start with. So our first plan, we spoke about it for 2 sessions, is to strategize and put ourselves in the mode of goodness. How do we move forward in the mode of goodness? Because we are interacting with passion, we are interacting with in ignorance in the atmosphere outside. When you go to work, you are interacting with people who are not in touch with Krishna. And as a consequence, you're coming in touch with their plans, which are completely disconnected from Krishna's plans in many ways. So as a consequence, you're dealing with people with material objectives and material activities, and coming in touch with people with material objectives and material activities means that we are basically moving far, far away from our objective of going back to the spiritual sky. As a consequence, one needs to tolerate the circumstances outside in material energy. They need to constantly understand that in spite of their feeling good or feeling bad, this is not where they ought to be. They ought to be very careful in plugging in and becoming a part of the general atmosphere. They need to have an internal plan. This internal plan has to be motivated by the Supreme Lord, which essentially means that we have to be motivated by establishing our identity in the spiritual sky. Once we are motivated by establishing an identity in the spiritual sky, then we go out into the world with that plan firmly entrenched in our minds. And then we interact with the world and tolerate the circumstances of the world. We execute what we need to do, but we constantly evaluate the circumstances with our internal plan. This is how one needs to be. One needs to be safe. The example given in Shastra is like the tongue. The tongue needs to be safe so that it doesn't get bitten by the rows of teeth. So how does one keep the tongue safe? Can you imagine, whenever we speak, we are constantly in touch with our teeth, but yet we also have to avoid being bitten by the teeth. So this is basically our position in the world. We tolerate the circumstances of being in an atmosphere which is alien to our internal objectives, which is inimical to our internal objectives, which does not understand the object of our love. They will never understand the object of our love that easily. They can't acknowledge that. Sometimes they even speak against it. We have to tolerate the circumstances of being in a world which is inimical and against and not aligned with our internal objectives. We constantly need to refresh our plan of going back by reinforcing our identity of being a servant of the Lord. This comes as a matter of calling upon his names, serving the deity form, coming in touch with Sadhu and Shastra and Guru, and coming in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam, which again is Shastra and Guru, and the deity form, and also Naam. So by calling upon Naam, Sadhu Sangha, Bhagavatam, worshipping the deity, and constantly coming in touch with the Dham through our ears, then we reinforce our identity. When we constantly reinforce our identity, we go out into the world and we exist in the world practicing Trinadapi Sunicena. We tolerate the circumstances. We tolerate the circumstances. Tolerating the circumstances means we don't plug into it. We don't become a part of it to such an extent that someone else is creating a future for us, and in that person's heart, Krishna is not present. The plans of Krishna consciousness is not there. Theoretically, they don't have an idea. It's all full of material activities, destructive activities for most part, because they're going to get destroyed in sometime in the future. So this is being warned against in the verses that we have read so far. See, the last 10 verses talk about the interaction of the elements, the senses, and the modes of nature. We will cover it in the subsequent week, and I will stop here and I'll take some questions if you have any.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for another wonderful class. And I have a question, please. It's also kind of relating to what we discussed last week, and then also going on into today's topic of discussion. You mentioned how we should always try and situate ourselves in the mode of goodness, and how sometimes, well, this is from last week, that sometimes we can be listening to classes or watching things, lectures, even if they could be quote unquote spiritual, but we don't feel inspired, or we feel that we can't practice our devotional life as best as we really should. So I would assume that then I am not in the mode of goodness if this is the case. And when I kind of reflect on the day to see what I have done in the day, or listened to in the day, or watched in the day, then when I'm contemplating on that, I just want to understand the situation. If we're trying to practice spiritual life and we're trying to listen to classes and watch spiritual things, but if we're still feeling not motivated, I'm completely think that is obviously a fault on my side. But how can we rectify this situation so we can always be inspired to always stay in the mode of goodness?
Well, inspiration is a matter of understanding inspiration. In other words, if you listen to a class and you don't feel inspired, can you elaborate on what inspiration is according to, what you feel needs to be done in terms of what is inspiration in your mind, basically?
So for me, it's more of, I get the enthusiasm to practice my spiritual life nicely, pick up the beads and chant my japa, be inspired to go and read more into the Srimad Bhagavatam. When I listen to the class, generally, it's brilliant. So I'm listening and I'm thinking, yes, yes, yes. But then the following hours in the day, I feel like a lack of, I don't know. When I see that what I'm doing during the day, I'm thinking, well, that inspiration is not showing out in my day. So it's probably a fault in my side. But yeah, so what can I do about this? Because trying to listen to get that inspiration, but it's not playing out in the day.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Fundamentally, it is simply a manifestation that we are not in the higher modes of goodness. So it is not so much that we were in the higher modes of goodness when the class was going on. It was more in terms of us coming in touch with spiritual subject matters that we were identifying. And we wanted to basically do all of that, but we are not in the proper mode of goodness during the day. As a consequence, what was gained in the morning is lost during the day. And this is a predicament which all devotees go through, practically. They chant very well in the morning, and then they go out to work. And during the working day, they come in touch with material energy in a very powerful way. And as a consequence, they somewhat come home a little bit, I would say, uninspired to continue their japa or to read, etc. They feel that they need to basically put their feet up in certain ways and plug into what their previous habits were. In many cases, people do that. They come back from where they were, and then they feel they are better situated to engage in material activity, distinct activity that is not related to Krishna consciousness than they were before that. This is a predicament which occurs until we can firmly be situated in the mode of goodness. And it is a matter of time, and it is a matter of sadhana. As time progresses and we constantly come in touch with Harinam and the activities, our senses would be purified, our intelligence would be purified, and our mind would be purified. And as all of this get consistently purified, then we have the ability to maintain the inspiration throughout the day. But because the quantum of inspiration in the morning, or rather the quantum of mode of goodness that we're imposing ourselves into in the morning, is not sufficient to carry us through the day, we struggle. But it is a matter of time. So what I'm saying is you're on the path, and this is a normal experience. What you must do is try and increase the intensity in the morning. By increasing the intensity and the quantum in the morning, it would give you the ability to do more during the day. So it's a matter of intensity in the mornings.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu. That you've kind of explained it lovely, but beautifully, perfectly. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So there's another question here. Can you explain how I can understand where I'm situated in the process of anartha nivritti so that I can work more to go to the next level? Well, this is, as I've explained to you, in terms of understanding where we are. Let us assume that someone is ending their anartha nivritti. Then one can understand that they would be able to recognize their mellow of relationship with Krishna. So it would become more and more distinct about their mellow. That's one thing. Second, you would be able to practically undisturbed chant the entire sequence of Mahamantra in a very undisturbed way. And this practically means that each and every time we chant, we are able to hear the chanting completely undisturbed in a very, very powerful way. This is the case with people who are chanting in higher modes of goodness as the anarthas of the lower modes, which is passion and ignorance, are overcome. So that's another symptom, is being able to hear Harinam and to be able to practice Krishna consciousness very nicely. So this is basically the best way for us to calibrate ourselves, is to see if we are, one, being able to chant very clearly. In other words, chanting is delightful. We are very eager to participate. We are very eager to read. We are very eager to associate. We are eager to serve. When we see the eagerness going leaps and bounds and doesn't go and is unchallenged and is consistent and it is prevalent over a long period of time, then that is one way to understand that we are making progress in anartha nivritti. The second is when we are distinctly disinterested in things that are not connected to Krishna. That is another way for us to understand that we are progressing in anartha nivritti. So it's all a matter of being steady so we can understand it. But then as we progress higher and higher and our consciousness grows higher, then our own relationship with Krishna will begin to blossom, and there'll be a greater and greater level of information on the eternal identity that will begin establishing itself in our hearts. So that's the other way for us to also recognize this. Is there any other question that I could help you with? Any other question from anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This
Hare
is
Krishna.
Chandra Das.
Very well.
Yeah, wonderful lecture and very practical and inspiring. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Sure.
The question is, Prabhu, regarding the identity in relationship with Krishna. So to become steady in our sadhana, is it sufficient to know that we are just part and parcel of Krishna and we need to serve him? Or do we need to go deeper and try to find our real connection?
Very good question. Now, because in some cases, very important for us to understand that spiritual life is all about eagerness. The more eager we are, the greater would be our ability to receive things. But how should we be eager is the question that we need to ask ourselves. What is a safe way to be eager? A safe way to be eager to understand our eternal identity is to be with those who are advanced. Because by being and associating with those who are advanced, we will develop an eagerness for the traits which they carry. A trait of those who are advanced is to wanting very much in greed to know who they are in relationship to Krishna. So how does this happen naturally? It happens naturally as we go higher and higher in consciousness. A, we are well positioned for coming in touch with such higher truth. B, this would also develop a deeper sense of desires because deity worship, the chanting of Naam, coming in touch with Bhagavatam, will all have a completely different, I would say, profound understanding. And as all of this happens simultaneously, then we are able to move forward and we would find us being directed in certain ways. Eagerness would direct us to, knowledge within Shastra, which would reveal more and more about who we are in relationship to Krishna. So for instance, someone who recognizes at the higher level of Anartha Nivritti that they are affiliated, or rather they have an affinity for Krishna as a cowherd boy in serving him in Goloka, they would develop an eagerness to know more and more about that mellow. So they would tend to read more, tend to find out more, they would tend to read about pastimes, and they would feel invigorated in that relationship. Everything about them would basically look at Krishna from that perspective. So all of this is seen, and it's quite a natural sequence. It is not artificial. It is not something to be thought of as which can be mimicked and can be coming across. So initially we start with being Das and Dasi, but then we do it well. It purifies us, and the purification essentially means we are eliminating the influence of passion and ignorance, allows us to put ourselves in a position of receiving higher consciousness and higher knowledge. And it's a natural process. In Lord Chaitanya's movement, it is a natural process because as we serve Lord Chaitanya in his movement, quite naturally, who we are in relationship to him, which is Krishna and Radharani, is also revealed to us. It is rewarded to us. It's mercy. So to summarize my answer, eagerness is required. Eagerness requires association with those who are also of the same mindset, where they're quite intense in their practices. The second principle is that we need to be situated in higher level of consciousness, which means we are practicing our sadhana in a very nice way. And then thirdly, what we would find is that as we are serving Lord Chaitanya, most importantly, this evolution is also quite natural. It is not something which we need to engineer from outside. It can happen naturally as well. Hope this makes sense.
Yes. Thank you very much, Prabhu. So one small question on the first principle of association. So is it okay, if we have that association through, lectures or books, or do we need to have a, personal interaction?
Lectures, yes. Lectures and books are absolutely fine. Lectures more so because they tend to carry the sound vibration and the gyan, the sambandha gyan of the person as well in the sound vibration. It enters into our hearts and it creates the opportunity for us to develop that greed. So yes, personal association is best because when we are in personal association, we have the ability to serve. And through that service, we have the ability to receive mercy. And mercy is the most important aspect of everything that we do in our Krishna consciousness.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Now, let's look at the next question here, which is on chat. Brahma comes in touch through the sound. Can you repeat this point? And if someone having no knowledge of Krishna, but just chanting as advised by parents or senior devotees, will they get mercy anytime? Yes, because family tradition can also give us faith. So faith has different varieties. Faith that is being passed on through family tradition. In other words, we may know nothing about Krishna consciousness. We may not know the technicalities, the intricacies, but then we have received this through family tradition because we have seen the father and mother do it. We end up doing it as well. Yes, of course, it is powerful and it can work nicely. The second point is about receiving Naam through devotees. Naam is the origin of all knowledge. Naam is the origin of everything. Naam is Krishna himself. Nama naminoho abhinnatvam. There is no difference between Krishna and Naam. As a consequence, when we receive Naam and we are chanting, Naam has the ability to create a path for the future. Naam has the ability to bring us in touch with communities. Naam has the ability to bring in touch with Guru. So everything can be manifested through the mercy of Naam. So the answer is yes. One need not know anything about the intricacies of Krishna consciousness, but if they are open-minded and they are chanting, then they would be able to receive Krishna consciousness and things would get arranged for them. More and more knowledge would come. Knowledge is necessary, but it would come. It would also be arranged by Naam because Naam has the capacity to make that arrangement. So we need to understand that faith, which starts with family tradition, faith which starts with listening to someone whom we believe in and then doing what they're asking us to do, can eventually lead to Krishna taking our hand and guiding us through different aspects of life. So yes, that's a good start. Now, can you clarify, for the past couple of years when I chant, I have consciously tried to remember Radha Shyamsundar, but lately I heard that offering my chanting to Mahaprabhu, rapid advancement will occur, as there won't be any offense that will occur. So please, can you throw more light about what would be best? Also, it's a bit hard to shift the mind to start to offer the chanting to Mahaprabhu, as in the past I have been offering it to Radha Shyamsundar. See, Mahaprabhu and Radha Shyamsundar are one and the same. In fact, Mahaprabhu is very efficient because he is one, Radha and Krishna in one form. It's very efficient because Mahaprabhu is in front of us. More importantly, he is the Yuga Dharma Acharya. He is also the personality of Godhead who appears in this Yuga. So, inspired to serve him in the way he wants us to, which is to assist in the mission of spreading the holy name, will practically be our offering to Mahaprabhu. So, go back to the original aspect of it. The idea is one needs to follow Vidhi, which is Lord Brahma. That is why this chapter has been given. It is Vidhi. Lord Brahma is called Vidhi. And one follows Vidhi, they are led to Mahaprabhu. Yeah, you follow sadhana bhakti, which is Vidhi, rules and regulations. You are led to Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is the one who can receive service, but he receives service in formal worship. He's very formal. He's in a sannyas ashram. So he's basically very formal in receiving things with us. Once we are accepted by Mahaprabhu, it is through his mercy that we receive the mercy of Radha Shyamsundar. So it is easy to go to him, serve him by spreading the mission as done by Srila Prabhupada, assisting Srila Prabhupada, and then receiving mercy from Mahaprabhu, because Mahaprabhu is there to give mercy. That's his mission. This is the opinion of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. There is the whole Bhakti trilogy, which is Madhurya Kadambini, then there is Raghavatma Chandrika. All of these basically have been written for the purpose of giving us more information on coming in touch with Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada's purports have drawn from all of this as well. So Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is also talking about serving Gauranga. By serving Lord Gauranga, he would direct us and he would give us mercy, which directly we may not be able to receive from Radha Shyamsundar. So we always approach Radha Shyamsundar through Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Srila Dhanurdhara Swami Maharaj, once he was writing in one of his meditations, which was actually quite profound. He used to chant. While he was chanting, he used to meditate that each and every bead is one of the toes of Mahaprabhu. It's actually a beautiful meditation. One of each bead of Harinam, you're actually massaging the toe of Mahaprabhu and receiving mercy. Yeah, that used to be a nice meditation. I was just wanting to share this because I remembered. But from a broad principle, in our situation, we have to serve Mahaprabhu in this movement, and by his mercy, receive the grace of Radha Shyamsundar. So one need not stop the meditation on Radha Shyamsundar, but one needs to acknowledge that that meditation is possible only because of service to Lord Chaitanya. So continue serving Lord Gauranga, because that's where we are going. That's where we are going to receive things. Any other question or comment?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, Dandavat.
Prabhuji, regarding my question is regarding the association of elevated devotees. So mostly I do the association by hearing and reading. Sometimes due to sometimes personal association. That's very rare to get these days. So I am personally not very inclined to hear many speakers. So I hear very limited speakers, and these days and apart from these days too, commonly there are many speakers come forward on Facebook and other channels, and even in normal days they come and visit also. There are seminars, but I think to shape up the mind and to guide, to follow the guidance, I need to follow certain people that I feel that inspired me. So, and I don't prefer to go to many places and run here and there. So is this approach okay, just to hear limited 2-3 speakers, or we should take association of many and try to get more? I don't understand this. I mean, I'm limited, my energy is limited, and I put only I hear only specific speakers. So is that okay?
Yes, basically the fundamental answer is that it's fine, because we need to go on inspiration. That is very important, because then it becomes efficient, because we tend to hear and we tend to adopt and we tend to follow. We act on the instructions. So it's more efficient that way. So I would not say it's a wrong approach. And I would not say that one needs to hear 50 different speakers, because there are quite a few number of very good devotees, who are constantly offering things. So there's really, I wouldn't really say that we need to be able to hear many. It's a matter of inspiration. It's a matter of inspiration. And if they're able to consistently give us spiritual support in being able to chant and be able to read Bhagavatam and to serve and to associate and basically move forward overall in Krishna consciousness, then that is adequate.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji. But there are many Maharaj these days, that a lot of, all are men with Prabhupada's mercy. We have many, very powerful sadhus, and they are coming forward and helping the fallen souls. But seriously, it's not possible to hear everyone and follow everyone, actually. I wish I can hear them. They are all very, very elevated, but sometimes due to limitations, I cannot hear. And I feel,
No, that's perfectly fine. I don't really think that you should feel bad about it. I don't think it's necessary for you to feel guilty. It's a matter of inspiration. It's a matter of being able to follow the instructions and to be able to see what is working for each and every one of us. Our circumstances are different. So we don't really need to feel bad about not being able to hear 50 different people if we are inspired and are able to move forward by coming in touch with a few.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Sure. Is there any other question or comment anybody else has that I could assist with? Okay, if there isn't anything else, then we will end the session here. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll connect again in the following session on Saturday, and we will complete the chapter. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.